Hello, good folks. This is Paul De La Garza with High Performance Business Solutions. We're about to get started on the latest installment of our in live sessions, which take place every week, every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Mountain Time. And we're going to be talking about the conflict resolution techniques for leaders. So, in the next 15 minutes, you're going to get some very specific tips in terms of how you can actually engage as a leader, as a mediator in the process of negotiating and assisting in the resolution of any conflicts that you may be facing within your team or within your colleagues. So we'll be right there. We're going to start here in about 60 seconds. Well, hello, folks. This is Paul De La Garza with High Performance Business Solutions, and we'd like to start right on time. It is 11 o'clock Mountain Time. This is Paul De La Garza with High Performance Business Solutions, and I'd like to welcome you to our latest in live session, Conflict Resolution for Leaders. Thank you so much for joining us today. You're going to be receiving some very specific, detailed tips in terms of how you can actually engage in some of the conflicts that you may have within your team or within your colleagues. And hopefully, by the time that we are finished here in the next 15 minutes, you'll have some really tangible steps from which you can depart and use effectively. So let's get started, and we'll start going from there. Okay, so let's just simply get going at this point. By the way, this is my information. Please, if you can take a print screen of that, it's got my phone number, it's got my email address, my LinkedIn information, and also my website, and you can get all sorts of information there. So let's start. So let's assume for a moment that you find yourself in the position of dealing with a conflict, and as a leader, you are in a position to now mediate. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to identify essentially the root cause of the conflict. So there are a couple of things that we need to cover. First of all, what to do. First thing, clarify the issue, gather the facts, make sure that you personally understand exactly what the conflict is truly about and what this whole thing is really developing over. Sometimes lack of communication really promote an escalated conflict that could be easily diffused by virtue of just effective communication and especially listening on the part of both parties. The second thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you identify very clearly the people that truly are involved in this particular conflict, and you identify what we'll call the stakeholders of the debate. So how they impacted, and make sure that in the process you understand exactly the perspective of each of the party members. The next one is probably the most important aspect of this entire process, which is separate the people from the problem. It's incredibly important that the problem be isolated from the personalities and the people themselves, because sometimes individuals have a tendency to associate behaviors and previous trends of a particular individual involved in the conflict and compound that with the actual situation itself, and that never ends well. So you want to make sure that you position and identify the actual problem and put aside personalities, okay? And making sure that at the very early stages that you do not have any kind of blame assigned. And lastly, identify the gem statement. David Brooks has written a couple of books, and he is the world-renowned New York Times columnist. And he's identified something that I think is very powerful in debates and in conflicts, which is identify the gem statement. The one thing that both parties agree upon, the desired outcome that both parties would like to have, but that maybe the conflict that has ensued has been a direct product of the way that each of them want to take it and take or arrive at the solutions, and that this is where they differ. So it's extremely important that you identify that and really position it in front of both parties. So you both agree that what you would like to have is this particular result. Is that correct? Yes, this is exactly what we have. We just differ how to get there. Okay, great. This becomes a very strong anchor so that in the process of the conflict resolution, you can always refer to it and say, I want to remind you that you both agree on this. It's just a matter of getting there and approaching it differently. Because as you will see, conflict resolution requires compromise, requires listening, requires an engagement of by both parties of a win-win process. Okay, so a couple of key tips. Number one, as the actual moderator of this, you want to make sure that you ask some very open-ended questions. Okay. Can you explain the concerns in more detail? Can you give me specifics as to how you would approach this differently? What is the reason why you would think that there is a difference of opinion, etc.? Secondly, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you remain neutral in this phase, focusing only on gathering information. You're not there to take sides. You're there to create daylight, to create a solution. Sometimes some of the moderators, frankly, focus too much on the problem and they energize the problem when in reality, a moderator needs to energize the solution. Okay, another component that is extremely important is to make sure that you create a safe and open environment so that people can actually feel safe and really express themselves openly. So you have to foster an open communication so that people will feel that they can express themselves openly without any kind of fear of reprisals or concerns or judgments on the part of the moderator or the part of the leader. The second thing that I would say to you is you need to make sure that you set clear ground rules. These ground rules have to be extremely well set from the very beginning. Do not proceed without any kind of engagement that says, first of all, I want to make sure that there is active listening on both your parts. Number two, that there's a commitment to finding a resolution on both your parts. And of course, establish boundaries. Please, no interruptions while one of the persons is speaking, and definitely no personal attacks. What we need to do is we need to take care of the problem and attack the problem with a productive, constructive solution, not attack the personalities of the individuals. And then listen actively, show empathy, engage and acknowledge the party's feelings so that they feel that they're connecting with you as the moderator, as the leader. Okay, and make sure that you use techniques that demonstrate that you're actively listening. In other words, feedback through paraphrasing, through what I heard you say is, and then you reiterate that in your own words, because that validates each of the members of the conflict, if you will, or the discussion, but it also, and not only validates, but it also provides a high level of accuracy to make sure that the conversation and the transmission by each individual has taken place accurately. So what to do here? Use nonverbal cues to make sure that you convey that you are, in fact, connecting with that individual. Yes, I hear what you're saying. Show engagement, okay? And of course, as I mentioned before, please avoid taking sides. It's just simply not going to be something that's going to produce a good resolution from which both parties can depart feeling that they have actually gained, even though they may have had to concede certain aspects of the argument. Okay. The next thing is that as a moderator, as the leader, you need to make sure that you understand everyone's interests and concerns. So you need to uncover some level of underlying interests, go beyond what each party is asking for. Try to define what their position is and the why, the interests. Often interests are about values and about fears and about needs. And they are, in some cases, they are the very thing that's generating the difference of opinion or the conflict itself. If a person projects or assumes that those interests are going to be put in danger, or for that matter, not observed or validated, that individual may jump into a difference of opinion that may be completely unfounded and completely unnecessary. Asking probing questions is the constant mantra-like recommendation of this presentation. So making sure that you clearly understand one basic thing and say, okay, so your desired outcome is blank. Help me understand one thing. Why is that so important to you? What causes that to be one of the most important things that you would like to gain from this discussion? And then, of course, the minute that you see some level of common ground, immediately not only recognize it, please celebrate it, emphasize it, because that could be a foundation of building toward the resolution. A couple of key tips in order to accomplish that: avoid assumptions on your part. You're there to literally moderate, you're there to uncover a resource that will eventually create a solution from which both parties can walk away to some degree fulfilled or satisfied. Acknowledge the emotions, but also understand that the facts and the interests are going to be the primary component of this. Let me make something also very clear. There will be times when there has to be a loser because there's a person that will not necessarily be in the right, and you may have to make the tough decisions. But if you go through the steps that we just outlined, what you're going to find is that in most cases, people will feel at least that they have been dealt with fairly. Okay, so what can we do to generate possible solutions? Couple of things. Number one, bring all parties to brainstorm what the solution would look like. Said, okay, I want to direct a question to both of you. What would be the ideal solution that you would like to have, while at the same token promoting the interests of the other person? And this is where you begin to get a connection between the two individuals. So collaborating on solutions also, it focuses on creating that win-win scenario from each of the parties' interests. And then, of course, make sure that you are flexible, compromise, and become creative. Sometimes a third unexpected option, something that you completely had not in mind, is the idea that satisfies both sides. And you have to, of course, not only remain open, but constantly pursuing a creative end. A couple of key tips in order to get there: keep the conversation future focused. Okay, so from now on, how would you like to resolve this issue? What would you like to do about this? Discuss what can be done moving forward instead of focusing on the past. And then, of course, make sure that you draw everybody so that they can generate and agree on the solutions. You do not want to actually come up with one solution from one individual and make sure, and you want to insist that the other person accepts that. That most likely will not end well. You want to, of course, draw everybody involved to make sure that at least they feel that they have had a participative role in providing some level of solution, or at least in part agreeing to it. Okay. You have to agree to the best solution. You have to evaluate the options. Sometimes the solution that someone is going to propose is not the best thing for everybody. Okay. So this is where you as a leader are going to have to make the tough decisions. So review the proposed solutions from each party, and then make sure that you engage in positioning this, because this is going to have to be a long-term solution so that this conflict does not repeat itself. Ensure that you negotiate the agreement. Once the solution is established, make sure that all the parties are going to be comfortable and that they will, in fact, and abide by it, and that they will promote the solution itself. And then I would follow up for sure with something in writing. As a result of our recent conversation, we have concluded that each party is going to do the following, and document that and send it to everybody that's involved. If you have some witnesses there, make sure that they get that document as well. A couple of key tips: make sure that everybody understands the agreement and their role in it. Here's the one thing: clarity is the key. Brene Brown has a great saying: clear is kind. Do not allow any assumptions. Do not be overly focused on being explicit in the solutions. Okay. And if necessary, make sure that in the process of getting this done, said, okay, hang on a second, you're going to have to make a concession as well as you do. If we're going to create a productive outcome of this whole thing, both of you are going to have to be in a position of concession. Let's pursue that. And you are the person that's going to engage in positioning that. So Couple of things to do to follow up that the conflict is in fact resolved. So in the process, say we're going to recheck here in a week's time to make sure that this is not going to rise. This problem is not going to rise its ugly head again, and that for all practical purposes, we're going to be repeating this engagement. Number two, make sure that you offer yourself as a valuable resource to coach and to guide people in terms of trying to deal with something that they consider completely out of the box, but that in fact is something that they should be doing to pursue a productive solution to this. And then, of course, effectively reflect, learn, so that maybe as a leader, you need to implement a number of policy changes that may preempt some of these conflicts from taking place again. A couple of key tips, okay? Keep communication open after the conflict. Literally encourage open communication with these folks to see how it's going. How was your communication with the other party? Did you get the resolution that you wanted? Are we there? And then acknowledge when someone is doing a really good job to try and achieve the very things that they've agreed upon. Not only celebrate that to the person of the party, so celebrate that publicly. So, okay. So how do we put together this whole thing? Here are some key principles for the resolution. Number one, stay calm and neutral. I think that we've said that. I just want to review. Stay calm and neutral. Keep emotions on check. Make sure that as a mediator, you are not personalizing the problem, that you focus on the problem itself. Focus on the interest, not on positions. Avoid getting stuck in what the party wants. Instead, dig for why they want it. You want this, help me understand why you want that. Does that make any sense? Is that something that you should be pursuing? And you will, once you get into that kind of flow, you will be able to actually find some of the positive steps. Communicate clearly and emphatically. Active listening is a critical component. Make sure that you have a receptive body language. And asking clarifying questions when a statement is made by someone and it doesn't necessarily generate the actual result in the answer that you think is necessary to pursue the development of resolution, you need to make sure that you clarify the communication. As a mediator, as a leader, win-win is everything. You want to do everything possible to walk away from an agreement in which both parties feel that they have gained something. When you have a zero-sum process, that deal is never going to last, because that's what that implies is that one person gained, the other one lost in the process. And then, of course, follow through on the agreements. Ensure that the actual conclusion is actionable. Make sure that you document it and follow up with each of the individuals to make sure that this is sustainable. Well, that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you've gotten some information about this. As usual, we're going to have this on our LinkedIn, in my LinkedIn profile, but also we are starting to put all of these mini webinars or these live streams in the highperformance-solutions.com website. And you can actually access them there here in the next couple of days, so that you can not only see this one, but things that have taken place in the last several weeks. Thank you so much. This is Paul De La Garza with High Performance Business Solutions. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And hopefully, we'll see you next week. Take care and be well.